The word star means to sprinkle forth or to shine. And it's said that each man is a star, radiating his own influence from his core or from his heart. And so we're going to illustrate the idea of the stars of the personality and the individuality. And we're going to draw a distinction between the two because you have a personality, but you also have an individuality or an inner self. The personality is like a mask that we wear, and in many ways, it's a coping mechanism so that we can get along with other personalities. And personalities are just adaptations to the external world. But the inner man within, the inner man or inner woman, is represented by the individuality, which is a fancy word meaning the innermost self, the core through which the life is actually shining forth to be expressed through this personality. And astrology is such an amazing way to lay this out. Without this ancient wisdom of astrology, we would be so lost. So in this video, I'm going to lay this all out for you. And I'm going to show you some diagrams here that describe these stars through the there's going to be 6 pointed stars. And, there's three signs to each element. So we have 3 fire signs, 3 air signs. And those two together, the fiery and the airy signs, create the star of the individuality. The earthy and water signs, and those 6 put together creates a 6-pointed star, which creates the star of the personality. So this is going to be a really fun video, and I hope that you will buckle up, get out your notebook and your pen, and get ready to take some amazing notes, because I think you're going to learn a lot about the psyche, and especially in how it works through the spirit and the soul. So here in this book, Esoteric Astrology, Alan Leo says each man is a star radiating from himself through the form he is wearing, an influence which is either personal, meaning limited to his physical consciousness, or individual, that is, of the spirit or inner character. In this sense, man is truly related to the stars. Paracelsus, a very famous alchemist, I think he was in the 16th century, but I'm not sure. But Paracelsus regarded the starry host as the condensed portion of the astral light, which fell down into generation and matter, but whose magnetic or spiritual emanations kept constantly a never-ceasing communication between themselves and the parent fount of all, the astral light. So the astral light, if you're wondering what is that, it's described in many of these occult books as being this formless light, this invisible light, which is reflected into the physical world. So the physical world is described as a shadow of a higher world or a higher dimension, a spiritual dimension. And so form is a shadow of the spirit. The stars attract from, he says, I think this is a quote from Paracelsus. He says, the stars attract from us to themselves, and we, again, from them to us. Life is fire, which comes like the light from the stars from heaven. Everything pertaining to the spiritual world must come to us through the stars. And if we are in friendship with them, we may obtain the greatest magical effects. As fire passes through an iron stove, so do the stars pass through man with all their properties and go into him as rain into the earth. The human body is subjected, as well as the earth, the planets, and the stars, to a double law. It attracts and it repels, for it is saturated through with double magnetism, the influx of the astral light. And this is true. We're influencing our environment, and we're being influenced by our environment. We are radiating an energy forth, and we're also attracting an energy into us. We repel and we retract. And this double magnetism is a result of the way that the spiritual world overlaps and affects this one. So we're going to discover here today together that the earth and the earth and water signs are that which tend to bring in and attract. But of course, they also have a repelling influence. And it's the fire and air signs that mainly, in the main, they radiate outwards. This describes extroversion, which in general are the fire and air signs, and introversion, which in general are water and earth sign people. Now, it depends on where the planets are placed in their chart. You could be a Taurus, an earth sign, and the majority of your planets could be in fire and air signs. So by nature, you're going to be more of an outgoing, extroverted Taurus. And, I always say I'm an extroverted introvert, but that's actually called an ambivert, which most of us are. We're a blend of the two. And um, astrology really shows this. So he says, before I get into your presentation here, he says, it is this astral light which forms the basis of our material universe, and every human being is a star in the astral light, the stars of the personality and individuality, taking into consideration the forms through which they are expressed, are not in any particular planets, although the planets are associated occultly with the stars and denote their special quality and coloring. In the personal star, the signs of the zodiac play the most prominent part, since they yield geometrical figures describing the peculiar form of each star, and also denote the personal coloring by the arrangement they take in each particular case. Every soul is therefore connected with the star of its individuality, but before it can be self-consciously aware of that star, and this is also termed like your archetype, right? The archetype or the role that you play throughout your life. It must have transcended the star of the personality, which for the majority may be symbolized by the half circle, the symbol of the moon, or geometrically for the more advanced by the pentagon, that five-pointed star. So we've got to learn to transform our physical consciousness. That is our identification with this body, right? The body constantly changes. The body is changing all the time. And if you identify as a 20-year-old when you're 20, then, I mean, guess what? You're going to have to change that identity when you become 30. And so that identity is always changing because it's subjective. But who is the one identifying? Who is the one doing the identifying with the body? That is the one who is beyond the body. That's the one who you truly are. And unless we identify with that deeper spiritual part of us, which is not material, we'll never become free in this life. We'll always be subjected to the flux, the ebb and the flow, the patterns and the uncertainty of life, which is not a comfortable way to live at all. So there's this concept here described through spiritual astrology, which is called the reversal of our spheres. And this is one last little section I want to read here for you before I actually hop into your diagrams and show you. He says, when a man has reversed his spheres, as it is termed, or transferred the attitude or attention of the self from the personality to the individuality, he does not dispense with his horoscope or cease to come under its influence. He simply rules his stars and changes their vibration from objective to subjective influences. And we need to understand the difference between objective and subjective. Objective is when you go into a room, a social environment, for example, and you're very objectively aware of the people and how they're reacting to you, and you are getting your feedback from them. Now, this is a reactionary state, right? And you might have an objective also, meaning I want them to like me. And so now what you're doing is basically in reaction to the environment. When you walk in subjectively, you're in your reality. You are self-amusing. You're having fun. You are saying inside jokes with yourself. You already have a smile on your face. You're not waiting for others to smile. You are this radiating influence in the room. That is your subjective world. You are very subjective. This is like the state that Brad Pitt is in. Do you think Brad Pitt walks into a bar and goes, "Oh, I hope I can win everybody's approval"? No, he's in his reality. And so that's very magnetic and it attracts people to him. And so there's this quality here. And we want to become more subjective because then we start to tune into, and we need a balance of both, of course. But when we live in our subjective reality, we start to tune into this inner man, this person that's inside of your body, inside of your mind, not the mind, not the body, but this light that radiates through them. And this is where you can tap into the way you want to feel without needing to have the externals match the way you think it needs to match before you allow yourself to feel what you want to feel. So you can say, what do I want to feel? Do I want to feel good? If I want to feel good, what thoughts can I think? What ideas can I entertain? What feelings can I generate in my body from my will, which is an individual quality, as we're going to see here, in order to get into the state that I want to be in? And now you're not reactive. You're not at the effect. You're now at the cause. And to me, this is truly where actual fulfillment and joy comes from, because when we wait for our outer life to match how we think it needs to be before we allow ourselves to feel the way we want to feel, we might wait forever. And we might wait all the way until the day we die, and we might not ever actually be fulfilled. Because I argue that, yes, happiness comes from outside things, but peace doesn't. The peace to be yourself, it only comes from within. And when you know yourself, this is where it gets easier and easier. And astrology is a means of knowing ourselves. Okay? So he says, when we reverse our spheres by bringing our attitude or attention away from our personality and into our individuality, our true self, we don't dispense with our pattern of life. We don't dispense with our destiny, our horoscope. We simply rule our stars and we change their vibrations from objective to subjective influences. And he says, when he has effectually identified himself with the new order of things, he also changes the ruler of the chart. So the ruler of the chart is the planet that rules your ascendant, and that is the ruler of the personality. All right. We're gonna get deeper into this here, but let me read this. As an illustration, we may take the life of an ordinary man whose consciousness is almost wholly turned outwards towards the objective world. His brain and his mind substance passing through it will be colored by the rising sign and the ruling planet. His feelings and changing moods of emotion will be under the influence of the moon, and his actions and moral attitude will be energized by the position of the sun. Really quick, let me jump in here and say, his feelings and changing moods of emotion will be under the influence of the moon. Did you guys know that crime rates go up under a full moon? It's a full moon today, by the way. Happy full moon. Why do crime rates go up under a full moon? That's because for the ordinary man, the moon is this thing that God put in the sky to control us, to regulate our emotions and our moods. And one of the ways it does that is through unconsciousness, because I really believe that the light within our hearts is a gift from God. And if we're not allowed to see certain things, I don't know why, but I think that's God's will. And so we tend to stumble about when we can't see. We tend to bump our shins against tables, run into walls, hurt other people. And this accumulates what's called karma, which is just simply we reap as we sow. So the moon is controlling this thing. And only by rising up to higher levels of awareness, AKA dislocating our consciousness from these control mechanisms of the heavens, can we then actually escape their influence or rise above it. This is what they mean by the fool obeys his stars, but the wise man rules them. So our emotions and our moods are under the influence of this monthly, ever-changing 29.5-day cyclic influence. And he says, and his actions and moral attitude will be energized by the position of the sun. The sun, therefore, will be the representative of his individuality and the moon of his personality. For many lives, the solar influence will become stronger and stronger until it gives him a fairly good moral view of life and more or less dominates his lunar fluctuations of moods and feelings. It may even dominate his ruling planet. As the ordinary man becomes more and more self-consciously individualized, the solar aspect will impart more and more coloring to his individuality. From the Mars coloring, he will pass to Saturn, which will establish his self-conscious individuality, then to Jupiter for expansion, and finally to Uranus, full individualization. The sun's positions, aspects, and influence will now dominate his horoscope, and he will no longer be classified as an ordinary man. So this is an interesting study, as I'm sure you can see here. One more, I swear, this is the last one I want to read. This is the opening of the chapter, actually. This is a quote from a book called Studies in the Bhagavad Gita. It says, the star under which a human entity is born, says the occult teaching, will remain forever its star throughout the series of its incarnations in one life cycle. But this is not his astrological star. That is concerned and connected with the personality, the former with the individuality. The individual, or as it is sometimes called, the individualized self, as it starts into existence as a white spark of divine light, as it starts into existence, is a white spark of divine light enclosed in a colorless film of matter. All right, pretty interesting stuff. Let's dive into our presentation here. Let me read this for you here before we get to the diagrams. This is about the stars of the personality and individuality. The universe manifests three aspects of self, not self, and the relation between both. Yourself, everything that is not yourself, which is all the physical matter, the animals, the other people, right? Everything you see outside, external. The self is the internal. And then we have this relation between the internal and the external. This is the Holy Trinity. Just as the universe manifests this three, so does the self show three different aspects as well. It goes out towards the world and affects changes within it, thereby evolving the capacity for action or volition. The first aspect of consciousness, cardinal. These relate to the cardinal signs, the cardinal cross, Aries, Libra, Cancer, Capricorn, the solstices, and the equinoxes. All right. It experiences agreeable and disagreeable, pleasant and unpleasant results of its various actions, right? You do an action and you get a result from that action. And this teaches you something, and this involves feeling, the second aspect of consciousness. And these relate to the fixed signs, Leo, Aquarius, Taurus, Scorpio. Then we observe, we analyze, we classify, and we remember the various results of our experiences. This is consciousness working in this universe. And so it involves the third aspect, which is thought or cognition. These relate to the mutable signs, which are Gemini, Sagittarius, Virgo, and Pisces. Now we've got all the 12 from these three. This is deep stuff, as you can see. And the zodiac really lays this out for us to help us see what the psyche is doing here, how God made it so that we learn and we evolve, and we're also parented and contained through this growth process so that we can rise higher and higher. These three physical aspects of action, or the physical body, feeling, or the emotions and soul, and cognition, or the intellect, are all reflections of higher principles of spirit, soul, and body. Right? We've all heard of spirit, soul, and body. Well, these have their reflections in the lower personality, and they have their reflection in a higher way where we actually transmute them into this higher mode. So the lower three of the personality are mortal, he says, until they are changed and transmuted into the higher mind, the spiritual soul, and the spirit. These three constitute the individuality, your individuality. Esoteric astrology, going further than the exoteric study, finds the individuality in each horoscope through its reflection in the personality. It's an occult teaching that the spirit is reflected into the physical body, right? The spirit of a person you see through their physical body, right? We see it through the lines on their face, which are habitual modes of facial expression. We see it through their body language, through their openness or their closure. This is a deep fact here of life. So the spirit is reflected into the physical body. The wisdom aspect in the astral or desire body, our body of emotions, and the manasic or mental activity aspect in the lower manas, represented by the brain. So we have a mental body. It contains all of our ideas, and it gets sick when we hold false ideas. We have an emotional body or a soul. That gets sick when we have too much anger, resentment, hatred, but it gets very healthy when we have love, peace, and compassion. Then we have this physical body, which attracts or repels different states of matter according to the spirit within us. So let's move on here. A few more preliminary things here that I think you'll find very interesting. I find this fascinating. When a man has reversed his spheres. Okay, so actually I already read this to you. Yep. Cool. I already read that. It's about the ordinary man and what he goes through and how he can start to reverse his spheres, right? The reversal of the spheres is an interesting concept because we have the precession of the equinoxes, which are the larger ages spanning thousands and thousands of years, which go backwards through the zodiac. So that's really an interesting thing to think about. Um, I just saw your message there, Tuli. I wish you could taste it. It is bomb. Every soul is therefore connected with the star of its individuality, but before it can be self-consciously aware of that star, it has to transcend the personality. All right, we talked about this. The moon is ruler over the earthy and watery signs of the zodiac. We're going to see why that is. These two triplicities forming interlaced triangles and representing, figuratively speaking, the star of the personality. The star is connected with the purely physical conditions of existence, or all that is concrete and definite in form. Also with the sensation which culminate in the passions and with the fluidic part of nature, or the selfishness of the solid and concrete life of the lower planes in order to express itself finally in a complete and separate personality. All right. In these star maps, an attempt has been made to show that the pairs of opposites are ever at work through the opposing signs of the same mode, the same quadruplicity, which is cardinal, fixed, or mutable. Thus, Taurus, the house of Venus, is opposed by Scorpio, the house of Mars. Okay? And so on throughout the circle of the zodiac. I mean, okay, so Mars is the strength in the body, and Venus is the grace. So imagine how these two blend when you see a pole vaulter, right? You see him do this amazing, graceful act of athletic skill, and then he lands it gracefully, and his muscles are shining in the sun. This is the blend of these two things. Mars alone is pure physical strength, which eventuates in just domination, might over right, or might is right, right? And then just Venus would be just being lazy on the couch, and you have all your flowers and nice things, and there's no strength, right? So it's really these two blending of things, which we see everywhere in nature because we never get Mars by itself. We never have just strength, not in this universe. This is reflected through the body. The blue veins are ruled by Venus. It's the Venus system, which has to do with the blue of copper. When copper oxidizes, it turns blue. We have Mars, which is the red arterial system. The red hue of the blood comes from the hemoglobin, which is iron, which Mars rules. The god of war rules iron to fashion weapons of war. And we have this blend. Why do we go to war? We go to war because we have ideals and things that we love. So there's ever this balancing, and the zodiac reveals it perfectly. Perfectly. We have Mars ruling Aries, the head. Then we have Libra ruling the kidneys, ruled by Venus. Mars and Venus always oppose each other in the zodiac. So amazing. So you can learn so much if you'll meditate on these geometries. They're perfect geometries which reveal the geometry of the psyche. So this goes throughout the circle of the zodiac. The planetary influences are refracted here, and the sense of true proportion is lost through the activity of the desire nature and the bondage of the mind that is enslaved by the desire forms. When you desire something, you're going to utilize that strength in your body, that heat, that passion of Mars to go and take it. And that creates karma, negative karma, because nothing is free in this universe. Or when you desire something through love, through that Venus aspect, then this turns into longing or desperation, which eventuates into depression, which is a total lack of action. So in the individual star maps, there are represented higher mental states in which the intellect is withdrawing from desire. This is why I always say there's nothing to attain. There's only things to let go of in this world, right? The more we hang on to this world, the more we suffer because this world is fleeting. It's passing. It's not even real. And the desire is changing into will, where you will the good of another. That's actually the definition of love as defined by St. Thomas Aquinas. Love is to will the good of another. Neither desire nor intellect is so much subject to the forms as is the case with the personal or negative signs. For the individual is now beginning to know himself as individual and is not so much the creature of moods and changes. So we're going to find that there's deeper theories and spiritual mechanisms to this thing that we call the personality. And an interesting thing, if you just step it down, is if you look at different people in your life who are earth and water signs, you'll notice that they take things very personally. This is something I've really noticed in my life. Well, earth and water signs, they take things personally. These are the personal elements. It's all personal to them. They tend to be more sensitive. Fire and air signs, we tend to take things not as personally. It's more in our nature to just go, well, whatever, you know, because it's the individual signs. So we need balance in both. It's actually important that we learn that we, find balance in whatever is opposite to our nature. And that's really how we grow, because opposites are really complements at the end of the day. So here's our first diagram. This is our first star. This is the Earth and water star, a star of a personality. These are the earth and water signs. So let me read this and I'll break it down for you. In diagram 1, which may be termed the star of the indefinite personality, the instinctual consciousness is the most active. The natural promptings are mainly influenced through negative signs, such as hunger and appetite, Taurus, the search for food. And we got Taurus right here. Okay. And here the key word is obstinacy. This is a fixed earth sign. So this creates obstinance. Virgo, the search for employment. Here's Virgo. The key word here is fear, which tends to be a very strong driving force, especially cognitively. The reason it says desire under Taurus and desire above Scorpio here is because these are fixed signs. Fixed signs have to do with desire, remember, with the soul. And cognition has to do with these mutable signs. And activity has to do with these cardinal signs. So we have Taurus, the search for food, Virgo, the search for employment. No, I'm sorry. Hunger and appetite is Taurus. The search for food, Virgo, and the search for employment, Capricorn. So those are the 3 earth signs. Boom, boom, boom. That forms this upward triangle. The feelings will also be aroused through the tendency of Cancer to produce sensitiveness, say, to the craving for food, etc. The passional nature may be stimulated by Scorpio, and the reaction of elation may result in depression or fear. All right. So you can see that there's actually a lot to this, and we have got many more stars, many more diagrams to look at, so we don't have all this time here. But I can send you these diagrams that I created. These are all found in this book, Esoteric Astrology. I just recreated them here, and I have these images. So if you want those images, you can contemplate them, you can meditate on them, and you'll learn a lot, especially when you study these oppositions. Sensuality, opposite, obstinacy. Depression here in Pisces, opposite fear here in Virgo. Sensation in Cancer, opposite cunning in Capricorn. So we're going to keep painting this picture here. Now we come to a star of the individuality, fire and air. This is self-centering consciousness. So this first one, this lowest level, is instinctual consciousness, really working through the appetites and the animal instincts. Now we're rising a bit higher through self-centering consciousness, but this is still a bit rough, as you'll see. So here's diagram 2, which may be said to relate to the star of the individuality. The indefinite individuality may be self-centering and beginning to strengthen the I notion, either through the rashness of Aries, or the observation of Libra, or it may be through superstition by the influence of Sagittarius, or the indecision of Gemini. The will of Leo and Aquarius in all probability will be latent, and credulity or uneasiness of belief will take the place of will. In other words, the individual will be submerged, and the personal tendencies will have first claim. All right? So here we have rashness in Aries, observation in Libra, credulity in Leo, indecision in Gemini, and superstition in Sagittarius. And lastly, we have indifference in Aquarius. These really reveal a lot if you know about the signs. And then these key words, if you contemplate them, they'll reveal a lot to your psyche. Diagram 3 is intended to show an advance in the expression of the signs. The lunar consciousness is more established and the personality more definitely formed. We're starting to get our bearings here between ebb and flow, between hunger and satiation, between desire and the fulfillment of that desire. But desire really is like a hydra. You cut one head off and then 2 more grow. You satisfy your cravings, but then you're going to crave it even more. So this is why everything is about learning to let go, and when we attach to God, I'll just say that when we attach to the spirit of God in our hearts and we attach to nothing on earth, simply by attaching to God, we are able to let go of everything else. And then we naturally we rise higher and higher and higher because this is a force that loves you. This is a force that actually loves you and wants your total fulfillment at the deepest place of your soul, not just in your stomach, you know, not just in your emotions. It wants the fulfillment of the totality of your being, which is to know yourself, to know itself. Even the inventor of the CPU, forget his name here, he invented the CPU and he discovered groundbreaking things about consciousness itself. Federico Fagan. Federico Fagan. Fagan? I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but that's his name. And he talks about how computers can't think on the quantum level. Human beings can. You smell a rose, and there's something in you that knows it's a rose. And we can't quite locate that in the brain. So there's a quantum level to consciousness. And basically, he says this whole thing is one. The universe is full of different fields, but that it's one, and it's one wanting to know itself. And so he's showing how quantum mechanics already is discovering this and knows this. So here's diagram 3. It's intended to show an advance in the expression of the signs. All right, so here we've got at the top, at the apex, we have Capricorn, which, you know, is the sign of the organized state. It's the sign of rank and hierarchy and achievement. And here we've got matter of fact, right? This is how authority works in this physical world. When the scientists say that this is the science and you must trust it, of course, we got to think for ourselves, but nonetheless, these are the people who run the world currently. Then we've got opposite that here in Cancer, which is changeable. Our emotions are always changeable. This is dawning upon the consciousness. We're realizing the true nature of these things. Lunar consciousness, changing moods, earth and water. Here we have Taurus, indolent, right? Indolence. Opposite that is Scorpio, resentful. We're learning through pleasure and pain through these earth and water signs. Here we have Virgo, digressive, and Pisces, sentimental. All right, let's continue on. Diagram 4. The individuality also is shown as forming. The planet Mars influences the nativity in addition to the separative influence of the rising sign, ruling planet, etc. The will of Aquarius is obscure and latent, and when manifested through Leo, it is domineering and assertive. The consciousness is becoming more self-centered and combative, which is a stage in growth, right? At least it's higher than just being indolent, obstinate, or overly agreeable, right? Just going along with the whim of others. At least at this point, we're developing will. We're developing our own tastes and our own ability to lead our lives. That is rising higher and higher into our sovereignty. So here at the top, we have obscure in Aquarius, obscurity. Here in Leo, it's domineering. Here in Libra, it's approbative. And here in Aries, combative. Gemini here has intermittent. And here's Sagittarius, wasteful. So this is self-centered consciousness. It's officially centered on that self, and it's still got a ways to go. All right, dominated mostly by Mars. Diagram 5, here we have another Earth and Water star, is intended to represent the personal self-conscious stage. The moon and the planet Mars are marked in their influence. All right, here we have Mars and moon. Sensitiveness through the sign Cancer and attachment through the sign Scorpio are more and more pronounced as the personality develops. The crowning state of consciousness is ambition. So with ambition, we're at least transmuting desire. You know, it's still feeding off of desire, but now it's on its way to becoming an aspiration, which is a much higher expression of our desire, right? Because now as we aspire to something, that means it's intermingled with an ideal. And ideals are good. Ideals are good for ourselves. Ideals are good for humanity, for society in general. So here we have ambition in Capricorn, sensitiveness in Cancer. Here in Taurus, we have obedience, right? So that obstinacy, remember that indolence in Taurus, is becoming obedient to something higher. And this, is symbolized in all the ancient symbolism as like when we start to tame that beast, which is our animal nature. We're starting to tame it. Here in Scorpio, we have attachment, which can be good or bad. Like I said, if we attach to God, we're going to be saved from the disappointment of all things on earth that we attach to. Um, so we actually need attachment on some level, on the highest level. Here in Virgo, we have criticism, and here in Pisces, we have hospitality. Interesting, isn't it? Let's go on. Diagram 6. The developing individuality represented by diagram 6 shows a more active influence of each of the positive signs. The will is beginning to act through conjugality and perseverance. Here in Aquarius, we have perseverance. And here in Leo, we have conjugality. This star is ruled by Saturn. Saturn is coming into activity here, which is the planet of limitation. We're starting to see that there are limits here, and this humbles us, this contains us, and this protects us. Limitations are there for a reason. The limitation of the wall around your garden is what allows it to be a garden. So now we have boundaries, strong boundaries. The will is beginning to act through conjugality and perseverance, and the individual consciousness is seen to awaken through the growing influence of Saturn, in addition to the influence of the ruling planet, the moon and Mars, etc. The activities are still governed by impulsion, right? Impulsivity, although educatability and perception are also beginning to influence them to some extent. So, conjugality in Leo, perseverance in Aquarius. In Gemini, we have educatability, and in Sagittarius, we have transmutation. Very interesting. Here in Aries, we have impulsion, and in Libra, perception. Fascinating. All right, diagram 7, we have a representation of the developed personality in which the influence of Venus in a concrete sense is becoming very active through affection. And cognition takes the form of analysis, which is eventually to lead to discrimination. The crowning activity is expressed in tact or taste, and in diplomacy or skill in action. This development marks the stage of the personal human consciousness. Amazing. So here in Capricorn, we have tact and diplomacy. Here in Cancer, we have psychic tendencies. So all that sensitiveness, all that changeability, now as it becomes steadied within the soul, and the soul learns how to navigate this realm, how to surf on the waves of change, we start to develop a psychic tendency, an ability to read our environment, to read others, and even to predict how the wave that we're surfing is going to change, or when the next wave is going to come. This is amazing. Here in Taurus, we have affection. And here in Scorpio, we have secrecy. Here in Virgo, we have analysis. And here in Pisces, we have emotion. Whoops. Emotion. Cool. So here in diagram 8, back to our fire and air star, we have represented the conditions of a developed individuality. The Sun and Saturn share in influencing the nativity, making faith as well as individualism the forms in which the will is most likely to be expressed. The individual human consciousness is awakening through intuition and a clearer vision. Reason and introspection are becoming active. The individual is expressing himself as a higher octave of the personality. Desire is giving way to will, and the cognitions are more abstract and more refined. The activities are duties and moved by a better understanding as to the value of responsibility. So there's an awakening happening here in the human being of something that goes beyond the personal self, something beyond the personality. Something is starting to matter more than just getting that thing that you want, or getting the kinds of reactions you want from others, or the approval of others. There is a moral tendency that's unfolding here, and aspiring to a higher ideal, but also to a higher expression of self that goes beyond this limited concrete self of the personality. So here we have the individual human consciousness star. So individualism here in Aquarius, individualism, which is very interesting because, that's really the crowning achievement of Aquarius is that fixed air. So it's all about, I know what I know. And if you know any Aquarius people, they tend to be very stubborn. That's that fixed quality in what they know. It's like they've figured it out, or if they haven't yet, they're going to figure it out, and they're going to figure it out by themselves. There's this very individual quality to Aquarius. And that's reflected, of course, in Leo, but which is the sign of the heart. And here we have faith, right? Faith is really that thing that takes us to the next level. Because without faith, you don't make that leap forward. Without faith, you can't fully believe in yourself. And so here we have faith in Leo. Here in Gemini, we have reason. And here in Sagittarius, we have introspection. In Aries, we've got intuition. And here in Libra, we have clear vision. So the sun, which is the life, and Saturn, which is the form, are seeing eye to eye now. And the life within our veins can actually work through our form, through an appreciation of your body, through a love of your body, right? Unlike these modern Christians who are just like, oh, I'm going to be in heaven one day, so I'm just going to get fat here on earth. It's like, eat a Chick-fil-A all day, every day. It don't matter because it's in the sins of the flesh anyways. And it's like, man, I'm sorry, you really missed the point here. The point being that your body is the temple of the living God, and that's the place of worship. And unless we keep our temple clean and healthy, how are we going to have access to our spiritual self, to the spirit that actually gives us life? You know? You know what I'm saying? So here, what this diagram is showing is that there's a balance now between these two antagonistic things. Remember, Saturn rules Aquarius. The sun rules Leo. So Saturn and the sun are opposing forces. The life is imprisoned in the form. But is it? That depends on the spirit of the individual, the attitude that we take towards life. Are we in a prison? Or is this a proper containment for an energy that needs form to be expressed? Sort of like you have a fireplace for that fire. Yes, you're limiting, you're containing that fire, but guess what? You can't make a fire on the carpet to warm your house because then the whole house is going to burn down. So our bodies, yes, it's a limited form of us. Yes, it's not the true version of us, but it gives an ability for our spirit to come into manifestation in this world. So individually, the faith of the sign Leo becomes the will of Aquarius, right? This higher will, the will of God. The I notion of the sign Aries is expanded through the wider perception of Libra. And the introspection of the sign Sagittarius is absorbed in the pure reason of Gemini unfolded. Reason above the intellect, right? Some of the most intellectual people in the world are the most evil on this planet. They will exploit, they will enslave. Intellect has no love in it. But when it rises into pure reason, this is a God-given quality that works through the intellect. So then it's absorbed in the pure reason of Gemini unfolded, as he says. When the triangle is complete, the unity of the one life may be intuitively seen by those who are seeking to tread the path of liberation, of freedom. And the three influences merge into the one planetary vibration, which connects the liberated soul with the Father star in heaven. All right. So here's the author. This is Alan Leo. He was born in 1860. He's the father of modern astrology. He made popular the newspaper columns, right? The horoscope readings in the newspaper. And back when he did it, it was legit. You know, it's become very pop culture, very just whatever, whatever. You know, oh, all you Leos, you better watch out for stubbing your toe today. No, it's hyper generalized. And he really helped initiate astrology into more of a useful application in delineating character and being able to understand our personalities and why we're all different. So he brought it out of this superstitious realm in which people generally understood astrology to be, where you like it's all about predictions and that kind of a thing. And he made it so that we understand the character within the soul through astrology, which really has always been the purpose of astrology. It's just our understanding wasn't really keeping up with it. And he helped bridge that gap. He helped us understand the real spirit of astrology. So it's so amazing what he's done, what he did in his life. And he was a Leo. Mr. Alan Leo is so well known among all those who are interested in astrology, and he has done so much to raise astrology from the position of a superstition to that of a science, that any book from his pen is sure of a welcome among serious students. These books are the ripe outcome of his long experience and thorough knowledge of his subject, summarized for the benefit of his younger brethren. So yeah, he was a cool guy. A lot of really cool diagrams here in this book. You should definitely get it and read all about it if you're interested. But I think that's enough for our brains today. I hope you really enjoyed this video. I hope you got something out of it. I love you so much. I'm going to have a discussion with the class now, but that's the end of this video. Thank you so much for liking this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to subscribe. There's more coming out. And if you want to join these live classes through Zoom, you are welcome. All people are welcome. It's totally free every Friday. All right. Maybe I'll see you in the next class. Just leave a comment saying you want to join, and I'll get your email and I'll send you the invite for next week. Okay. Much love. Peace be with you. Infinite love and gratitude, and I'll see you very soon. Peace.